Krishna Prishna Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauranga Nirvisheshi Shunyadi Vashakya Deshataya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Vedanta Srivasadi Gaur Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Sarvashastra Piyusha Sarvedika Satpala Sarvasiddhanta Ratnadhya Sarvalokika Prada Sarva Bhagavata Prana Bhagavata Prabhu Kalidvanto Vidadit Shri Krishna Parivartita Parvananda Pathaya Prema Vashaksharayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishna Namaste Madhega Bandho Matsankin Madhguru Manmahadhara Nistargam Bhagyamudanam Dhamasmati Sadhu Sadhu Dada Inatin Chokchata Paripanam Jivadachi Mantre Mahdatmantevasti Materialistic ego. Okay, we are in 2.5.24 purport till 2.5.35 for today. 2.5.24 purport. Materialistic ego or the sense of identification with matter is grossly self-centered, devoid of clear knowledge of the existence of God. And this self-centered egoism of the materialistic living entities is the cause of their being conditioned by the other paraphernalia and continuing their bondage of material existence. In the Bhagavad Gita, this self-centered egoism is very nicely explained in the 7th chapter, verses 24 through 27. The self-centered impulsiveness, without a clear conception of the personality of God, it concludes in his own way that the personality of God takes a material shape from his original impersonal spiritual existence for a particular mission. And this misleading conception of the Supreme Lord by the self-centered impersonalist continues, even though he seemed to be very interested in Vedic literature such as the Brahma Sutras and other highly intellectual sources of knowledge. The ignorance of the personal feature of the Lord is due simply to the mixture of different modes. The impulseless thus cannot conceive of the Lord's eternal spiritual form of eternal knowledge, bliss, and existence. The reason is that the Lord reserves the right of not exposing himself to the non-devotee, who even after a thorough study of literature like the Bhagavad Gita, remains an impersonalist simply by obstinacy. This obstinacy is due to the action of Yogamaya, a personal energy of the Lord that acts like an aide-de-camp assistant by covering the vision of the obstinate impersonalist. Such a bewildered human being is described as mudha or grossly ignorant because he is unable to understand the transcendental form of the Lord as being unborn and unchangeable. If it were true that the Lord takes a form or material shape from his original impersonal feature, then that would mean he takes birth and is changeable from impersonal to personal, but he is not changeable. Nor does he ever take a new birth like a conditioned soul. The conditioned soul may take a form birth after birth due to his conditional existence in matter. But the self-centered impersonalists, by their gross ignorance, accept the Lord as one of them because of self-centered egoism, even after so-called advancement of knowledge in the Vedanta. The Lord, being situated in the heart of every individual living entity, knows very well the tendency of such conditioned souls in terms of past, present, and future. But the bewildered conditioned soul hardly can know him in his eternal form. By the will of the Lord, therefore, the impersonalist, even after knowing the Brahman and Paramatma features of the Lord, remains ignorant of his eternal personal feature as ever-existent Narayana, transcendental to all material creation. The cause of such gross ignorance is constant engagement by the materialistic man in the matter of artificially increasing material demands. To realize the supreme personality of Godhead, one has to purify the materialistic senses by devotional service. The mode of goodness or the Brahmanical culture recommended in the Vedic literatures is helpful to such spiritual realization. And thus the Jnana Shakti stage of the conditioned soul is comparatively better than the other two stages, namely Dravya Shakti and Kriya Shakti. The whole material civilization is manifested by a huge accumulation of materials, or in other words, raw materials for industrial purposes. And the industrial enterprises, Kriya Shakti, are all due to gross ignorance of spiritual life. In order to rectify this great anomaly of materialistic civilization based on the principles of Dravya Shakti and Kriya Shakti. One has to adopt the process of devotion service of the Lord by adoption of the principles of Karma Yoga mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita 9.27 as follows. Yat karoshi yadashnasi yad juhoshi dadasi yat tapasyasi kaunteya tat kurushva matarpanam. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, and whatever austerities you perform, do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me. Okay. 625. Okay. Are you muted? Wait. Am I muted?
We are also not able to hear Achutanam.
My speakers are on. I think you are muted. Something wrong with the setup.
ईयरफोन लगा है क्या आपको?
Okay.
You will ask the
625. Okay, wait. Okay. 25. Tamasadapi bhutade vikurvanad abhunnabhaha tasya matra gunashabdo lingam yadrashridrishyayo. From the darkness of false ego, the first of the five elements, namely the sky, is generated. In its subtle form is the quality of sound, exactly as the seer is in relationship with the seen. Nanu tamasat prathamam shabdo bhavati iti prasiddham. Is it not well known that from tamasa ahankara, sound comes out? Satyam, that's true. Satu tasya navasaha matra sukshmam rupam. That sound is a subtle form of nabhas or ether. गुणश्च असाधारणः व्यावर्तकः धर्मः शब्दद्वारा नभः उत्पद्यत इत्यर्थः. Its subtle form is the quality of sound. This is its unique feature. एवमेव स्पर्शादिष्वपि द्रष्टव्यम्. In this way, touch, form, taste, smell, they all have their unique features. शब्दस्य लक्षणं लिङ्गमिति. उद्याद्यन्तरितेन केनचित् उच्चैः गजो गज इत्युक्ते यो गजद्रष्टा यश्च तेन दृश्यो गजस् तयोर् लिङ्गं बोधकम्. लिङ्गविशेषणत्वा शब्दविशेषणत्वं कारणाशयान्. The five elements, namely sky, air, fire, water, and earth, are all but different qualities of the darkness of false ego. This means that the false ego in the sum total of Mahatattva is generated from the marginal potency of the Lord. And due to this false ego of lording it over the material creation, ingredients are generated for the false enjoyment of the living being. Practically speaking, the living being is the dominating factor over the material elements as the enjoyer, although the background is the Supreme Lord. Therefore, the Jivatmas, the conditioned Jivatmas are called Purushas. Factually, save and except the Lord, no one can be called the enjoyer, Purusha. But the living entity falsely desires to become the enjoyer. This is the origin of false ego. When the bewildered living entity desires this, the shadow elements are generated by the will of the Lord. Shadow elements. Because these elements originally exist in the spiritual world in their original spiritual forms. And the living entities are allowed to run after them as after a phantasmagoria. It is said that first the Tanmatra sound is created and then the sky. And in this verse it is confirmed that actually it is so. But sound is a subtle form of the sky. And the distinction is like that between the seer and the seen. The sound is a representation of the actual object, as the sound produced when one describes the object gives an idea of the object. Therefore, sound is a subtle characteristic of the object. Similarly, the sound representation of the Lord in terms of his characteristics is the complete form of the Lord, as was seen by Vasudeva and Maharaj Dasharatha, the fathers of Lord Krishna, Lord Ram. The sound representation of the Lord is not different from the Lord himself, because the Lord and his instruction and his representation in sound are absolute knowledge. Lord Chaitanya has instructed us that in the holy name of the Lord, the sound representation of the Lord, all the potencies of the Lord are invested. Thus, one can immediately enjoy the association of the Lord by the pure vibration of the sound representation of his holy name. And the concept of the Lord is immediately manifested before the pure devotee. A pure devotee, therefore, is not aloof from the Lord even for a moment. The holy name of the Lord, as recommended in the Shastras, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, may therefore be constantly chanted by the devotee, aspiring to be constantly in touch with the Supreme Lord. One who is thus able to associate with the Lord is sure to be delivered from the darkness of the created world, which is a product of false ego. So this non-difference between the sound and the one who is represented in sound is only a feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the material world, if you look at an elephant and you refer to it as an elephant, the sound elephant and the actual elephant are actually different, even though the sound conveys the sense of that elephant. Something chat box. Middle 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita are about Bhakti Yoga, so I'm curious to know if Bhagavad Gita 9.27 is about Karma Yoga or Bhakti Yoga. That particular aspect of Karmarpana comes in both Karma Mishra Bhakti and Bhakti Mishra Karma. Bhakti Mishra Karma is called Karma Yoga. Karma Mishra Bhakti is one type of Bhakti Yoga. That's all. So that verse can be taken to refer to the karma component of Bhakti Mishra Karma, like how Madhvacharya interprets it. Or it can be taken as the karma component of Bhakti Yoga, as Ramanujacharya interprets it. But we should remember that in exclusive Bhakti, you will not find any place for this. Where there is no place for adharma, there is no place for dharma even when it is offered to Krishna. It is just pure Bhagavata Dharma. Okay. It's 26 to 29. Navasoth vikurvana abhusparsha gunonilaha paranvayat shabdavamscha prana ojas saho valam vayor vikurvana kalakarma swabhavataha उदपद्यत तेजो वै रूपवत् स्पर्श शब्दवत् तेजसस्तु विकुर्वाणा आसीदंभो रसात्मकं रूपवत् स्पर्शवत् चाम्भो घोषवच्च परान्वयात् विशेषस्तु विकुर्वाणा अंभसो गंधवान् अभूत् परान्वयाद रसस्पर्श शब्द रूप गुणान्वितः. Because the sky is transformed, the air is generated with the quality of touch. And by previous succession, the air is also full of sound and the basic principles of duration of life, sense perception, mental power, and bodily strength. When the air is transformed in course of time and nature's course, fire is generated, taking shape with a sense of touch and sound. Since fire is also transformed, there is a manifestation of water full of juice and taste. As previously, it also has form and touch and is also full of sound. And water being transformed from all variegatedness on earth appears odorous and as previously becomes qualitatively full of juice, touch, sound, and form, respectively. The whole process of creation is an act of gradual evolution and development from one element to another, reaching up to the variegatedness of the earth. As so many trees, plants, mountains, rivers, reptiles, birds, animals, and varieties of human beings. The sense perception, the quality of sense perception is also evolutionary, namely generated from sound, then touch, and from touch to form. Taste and odor are also generated along with the gradual development of sky, air, fire, water, and earth. They are all mutually the cause and effect of one another, but the original cause is the Lord himself in his plenary portion as Mahavishnu, lying in the causal water of the Mahat Tattva. As such, Lord Krishna is described in the Brahma Samhita as the cause of all causes, and this is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 10.8 as follows. Aham sarvasya prabho mattas sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitah. I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotion service and worship me with all their hearts. Something in the chat box. Let me see. The reason is that the Lord reserves the right of not exposing himself to the non-devotee who, even after a thorough study of literature like the Bhagavad Gita, remains an impersonalist simply by obstinacy. Does it also apply for Prabhupada's edition of Bhagavad Gita? Yes, certainly. A demon is a demon. Even if you bring a pure devotee in front of him, the demon will say no. The qualities of sense perception are fully represented in the earth, and they are manifested in other elements to a lesser extent. In the sky, there is sound only. Sky means ether. Whereas in the air, there are sound and touch. In the fire, there are sound, touch, and shape. And in the water, there is taste also, along with the other perceptions, namely sound, touch, and shape. In the earth, however, there are also all the above mentioned qualities with an extra development of odor also. Therefore, on the earth, there is a full display of the variegatedness of life, which is originally started with the basic principle of air. Diseases of the body take place due to derangement of air within the earthly body of the living beings. Mental diseases result from special derangement of the air within the body, and as such, yogic exercise is especially beneficial to keep the air in order so that diseases of the body become almost nil by such exercises. When they are properly done, the duration of life also increases, and one can have control over death also by such practices. A perfect yogi can have command over death and quit the body at the right moment when he is competent to transfer himself to a suitable planet. The Bhakti. surpasses all other yogis because by dint of his devotional service, he is promoted to the region beyond the material sky and is placed in one of the planets in the spiritual sky by the supreme will of the Lord, the controller of 30. वैकारिकान् मनोजज्ञे देवा वैकारिका दश दिग्वातार्क प्रचेतोष्वी वह्नीन्द्रोपेन्द्र मित्रकाः. From the mode of goodness, the mind is generated and becomes manifest, as also the 10 demigods controlling the bodily movements. Such demigods are known as the controller of the directions, the controller of the air, the sun god, Varuna, the Ashwini Kumaras, the fire god, the king of heaven, the worshipable deity in heaven, the chief of the Adityas, and Brahmaji, the Prajapati, all come into existence. Mana Shabdena, that's the mind. Mana. The mind also refers to the controlling deity of the mind, Chandra. Then there are these Vaikarika, Satvika Hankara, the effects of Satvika Hankara. So you have the controllers of the 5 Gyanendriyas and the 5 Karmendriyas. Swami gives a list here. Manasascha Satvikatvam Chittat na Atibhinna Avasthayam Yayam. The mind being considered Satvika is to be understood as at the time when it is not very different from Chitta. Chittam Kapileya. Chitta has been described in Lord Kapila's teachings. Text 3.26.22. Upendroyam tad avesho devata visheshaha. Here Upendra is mentioned. Where is Upendra? Upendra, the chief of the Adi. No, the worshipful deity in heaven. This refers to a particular deity known as Upendra, who is empowered by the actual Upendra. Madhvacharya has quoted from Vakhni Purana regarding there is one particular deva known as Yagya, who is the presiding deity of the feet. And Vakhni Purana says that Lord Hari is beginningless and endless. And he enters, the unborn Lord, who enters into all the Vaikarika devas. He also enters into the toe of the feet. He is the controller of the universe. He is the almighty being. The demigod who controls the feet, known as Yagya, is another person. Lord Hari personally enters into that person, that deva. So in this way, the possessor of unlimited potencies exists in the bodies while controlling everything. Vaikarika is the neutral stage of creation. And Tejas is the initiative of creation, while Tamas is the full display of material creation under the spell of the darkness of ignorance. Manufacture of the necessities of life in factories and workshops, excessively prominent in the age of Kali or in the age of the machine, is a summit stage of the quality of darkness. Such manufacturing enterprises by human society are in the mode of darkness because factually there is no necessity for the commodities manufactured. Human society primarily requires food for subsistence, shelter for sleeping, defense for protection, and commodities for satisfaction of the senses. The senses are the practical signs of life, as will be explained in the next verse. Human civilization was meant for purifying the senses, and objects of sense satisfaction should be supplied as much as absolutely required, but not for aggravating artificial sensory needs. Food, shelter, defense, and sense gratification are all needs in material existence. Otherwise, in its pure and contaminated state of original life, the living entity has no such needs. The needs are therefore artificial, and in the pure state of life, there are no such needs. As such, increasing the artificial needs, as is the standard of material civilization or advancing the economic development of human society, is a sort of engagement in darkness without knowledge. By such engagement, human energy is spoiled because human energy is primarily meant for purifying the senses in order to engage them in satisfying the senses of the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord, being the supreme possessor of spiritual senses, is the master of the senses, Rishikesha. Rishika means the senses and Isha means the master. The Lord is not the servant of the senses. Or in other words, he is not directed by the dictation of the senses, but the conditioned souls or the individual living entities are servants of the senses. They are conducted by the direction or dictation of the senses. And therefore, material civilization is a kind of engagement in sense gratification only. The standard of human civilization should be to cure the disease of sense gratification. And one can do this simply by becoming an agent for satisfying the spiritual senses of the Lord. The senses are never to be stopped in their engagements, but one should purify them by engaging them in the pure service of sense gratification of the master of the senses. This is the instruction of the whole Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna wanted, first of all, to satisfy his own senses by his decision, not to fight with his kinsmen and friends. But Lord Shri Krishna taught him the Bhagavad Gita just to purify Arjuna's decision for sense gratification. Therefore, Arjuna agreed to satisfy the senses of the Lord, and thus he fought the battle of Kurukshetra as the Lord desired. The Vedas instruct us to get out of the existence of darkness and go forward on the path of light. Tamasi ma jyotirgama. The path of light is therefore to satisfy the senses of the Lord. Misguided men or less intelligent men follow the path of self-realization without any attempt to satisfy the transcendental senses of the Lord by following the path shown by Arjuna and other devotees of the Lord. On the contrary, they artificially try to stop the activities of the senses, the yoga system, or they deny the transcendental senses of the Lord, the jnana system. The devotees, however, are above the yogis and the jnanis because pure devotees do not deny the senses of the Lord. They want to satisfy the senses of the Lord. Only because of the darkness of ignorance do the yogis and jnanis deny the senses of the Lord and thus artificially try to control the activities of the diseased senses. In the diseased condition of the senses, there is too much engagement of the senses in increasing material needs. When one comes to see the disadvantage of aggravating the sense activities, one is called a jnani. And when one tries to stop the activities of the senses by the practice of yogic principles, he is called a yogi. But when one is fully aware of the transcendental senses of the Lord and tries to satisfy his senses, one is called a devotee of the Lord. The devotees of the Lord do not try to deny the senses of the Lord, nor do they artificially stop the actions of the senses, but they do voluntarily engage their purified senses in the service of the master of the senses, as was done by Arjuna, thereby easily attaining the perfection of satisfying the Lord, the ultimate goal of all perfection. Okay, give me a minute. Let me check Dr. Sami Thakur's explanation to this series. Where? So it's gigantic. Where are we right now? We are in 2.5 point something. One. तैजसाक्तो विकुर्वाणा इंद्रियाणि दशाभवन ज्ञानशक्ति क्रियाशक्तिर्बुद्धिः प्राणश्च तेजसौ श्रोत्रं त्वघ्राणद्रिर्जिह्वा वाग्दोर्मेढ्राङ्घ्रिपायवः. By further transformation of the mode of passion, the sense organs like the ear, skin, nose, eyes, tongue, mouth, hands, genitals, legs, and outlet for evacuating, together with intelligence and the life energy, are all generated. The living condition in material existence depends more or less on one's intelligence and powerful life energy. Intelligence to contract a hard struggle for existence is assisted by the senses for acquiring knowledge. And the life energy, this life energy refers to prana here, is maintained by the manipulation of the active organs like the hands and legs. But on the whole, the struggle for existence is an exertion of the mode of passion. Therefore, all the sense organs, along with the intelligence and the life energy, prana, are different products and byproducts of the second mode of nature called passion. This mode of passion, however, is the product of the air element as described before. 32. यदैते संगता भावा भूतेन्द्रिय मनोगुणा यथायतन निर्माणे न शेकुर ब्रह्मवित्तम. O Narada, the best of the transcendentalists, the formation of the body cannot take place as long as these created parts, namely the elements, senses, mind, and modes of nature, are not assembled. From Karana Srishti Muktva Karya Srishti Maha. So these are all the creation of the causes. Now he begins to talk about the creation of the effects. This is just the raw matter, but everything has to put together and assemble it in the form of the different bodies for the conditioned souls. The different types of bodily construction of the living entities are exactly like different types of motor cars manufactured by assembling the allied motor parts. When the car is ready, the driver sits in the car and moves it as he desires. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 18.61. The living entity is as if seated on the machine of the body, and the car of the body is moving by the control of material nature, just as the railway trains are moving under the direction of the controller. The living entities, however, are not the bodies. They are separate from the bodily cars. But the less intelligent material scientists cannot understand the process of assembling the parts of the body, namely the senses, the mind, and the qualities of the material modes. Every living entity is a spiritual spark, part and parcel of the Supreme Being. And by the kindness of the Lord, for the Father is kind to his sons, the individual living beings are given a little freedom to act according to their will, to lord it over the material nature. Just as a father gives some playthings to the crying child to satisfy him, the whole material creation is made possible by the will of the Lord to allow the bewildered living entities to lord it over things as they desire, although under the control of the agent of the Lord. Living entities are exactly like small children playing in the material field under the control of the maidservant of the Lord, nature. They accept Maya or the maidservant as all in all, and thus wrongly conceive the supreme truth to be feminine, goddess Durga, etc. The foolish, childlike materialists cannot reach beyond the conception of the material servant, a material nature. But the intelligent grown-up sons of the Lord know well that all the acts of material nature are controlled by the Lord, just as a maidservant is under the control of the master, the father of the undeveloped children. The parts of the body, such as the senses, are the creation of the Mahatattva. And when they are assembled by the will of the Lord, the material body comes into existence. The living entity is allowed to use it for further activities. This is explained as follows. तथा संहत्य चान्योन्यम भगवत शक्ति चोदिताः सद्दसत्त्वं पादाय चोभयं ससृजुष्यदः. Thus, when all these became assembled by the force of the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this universe certainly comes into being by accepting both the primary and secondary causes of creation. Bhagavatastheshveva pravishtasya. The Supreme Lord, he entered into everything that had been created. Creation simply means manifestation. So as each of these are being manifested, the Supreme Lord then enters into it. Shaktya, samhanana karinya chodita yojita santaha. And through his potency, then all of these are assembled now. In that way, the first body is the Brahmanda. That itself is created. In this verse, it is clearly mentioned that the Supreme Personality of Godhead exerts his different energies in the creation. It is not that he himself is transformed into material creations. He expands himself by his different energies, as well as by his heavenly portions. In a corner of the spiritual sky is Brahmajyoti. A spiritual cloud sometimes appears, and the covered portion is called the Mahatattva. The Lord then, by his plenary portion is Mahavishnu, lies down within the water of the Mahatattva, and the water is called the causal ocean, Karana Jala. While Mahavishnu sleeps within the causal ocean, innumerable universes are generated along with his breathing. These universes are floating, and they are scattered all over the causal ocean. They stay only during the breathing period of Mahavishnu. In each and every universal globe, the same Mahavishnu enters again as Garbhodakashaya Vishnu and lies there on the serpent-like Shesha incarnation. From his navel sprouts a lotus stem, and on the lotus, Brahma, the Lord of the universe, is born. Within the universe, Brahma creates all forms of living beings of different shapes in terms of different desires. He also creates the sun god, the moon god, and other demigods. Therefore, the chief engineer of the material creation is the Lord himself, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 9.10. It is he only who directs the material nature to produce all sorts of moving and non-moving creations. There are two modes of material creation. The creation of the collective universes, as stated above, done by the Mahavishnu, and the creation of the single universe. Both are done by the Lord, and thus the universal shape, as we can see it, takes place. Therefore, Varshapurga Sahasrante, Tadandam Mudakeshayam, Kalakarma Swabhavasto Jivo Jivama Jiva Yat. Thus, all the universes remain thousands of eons, ages within the water, the causal ocean, and the lot of living beings entering into each of them caused them to become fully animated. Jivo Hiranya Garbhantari Yami Pushaha. So the Lord, Jiva Yatiti Vipattehe, Tasyatma Shariram Iti Shrutehe. Here the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the inner controller of Hiranyagarbha, Brahma, this Purushavatara, he is referred to as Jivaha. See, Jivaha, the Lord of the living beings. Tasyatma Shariram. Because the Shruti says that the Supreme Lord himself has entered into the Jiva. Therefore, he is sometimes referred to as that. Skanda Purana. Madhvacharya is quoted. Pranam dharayate yasmat sajivah parameshwaraha. Because the Supreme Lord holds the life airs, therefore he is said to be the Jiva. Even though he is filled with great potency, and even though he is not a Jivatma, Athava Jivayan Jagat, or else he is referred to as the Jiva because he gives life to the entire universe. The Lord is described here as the Jiva because he is the leader of all other Jivas, living entities. In the Vedas, he is described as the Nitya, the leader of all other Nityas. You get the logic. He is the Nitya who leads other Nityas. Therefore, he is described as Nitya. So similarly, he is described as a Jiva because he leads other Jivas. But we should understand that he is the independent Nitya. Similarly, even if you say that, if you take Jiva to mean the living being, that's what it means, the enlivener or the living being, the enlivening being, then it should still be accepted that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the independent enlivening being. Whereas all those whom we refer to as Jivatmas, the finite souls, they are all the dependent enlivening beings. The Lord's relation with the living entities is like that of the father with the sons. The sons and the father are qualitatively equal. But the father is never the son, nor is the son ever the father who begets. So as described above, the Lord as the Bodhakashai Vishnu or Hiranyagarbha Super Soul enters into each and every universe and causes it to become animated by begetting the living entities within the womb of the material nature, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 14.3. After each annihilation of the material creation, all the living entities are merged within the body of the Lord, and after creation, they're again impregnated within the material energy. In material existence, therefore, the material energy is seemingly the mother of the living entities and the Lord is the father. When, however, the animation takes place, the living entities revive their own natural activities under the spell of time and energy, and thus the varieties of living beings are manifested. The Lord, therefore, is ultimately the cause of all animation in the material world. Animation meaning movement. 35. स एव पुरुषस्तस्मात् अंडं निर्भिद्य निर्गतः सहस्रोर्वङ्घ्रिबाह्वक्षः सहस्राननशीर्षवान्. The Lord Mahavishnu, although lying in the causal ocean, came out of it, and dividing himself as Hiranyagarbha, he entered into each universe and assumed the Virat Rupa with thousands of legs, arms, mouths, heads, etc. स एव पुरुषेति जगृहे पौरुषं रूपम् इत्यादि प्रथमे यद् रूपं विरूपितं स एव तत्रापि उक्तं पश्यन्त्यदो रूपम् इत्यादि यस्य पुरुषस्य अवयवैर्लोकान् कल्पयति. So that Purusha, the Purusha who is being described here is the same as the Purusha described in 1.3.1, 1.3.4, and so on. 1.3.3 1.3.1 refers to the first Purusha, whereas 1.3.4, 1.3.3, they refer to the one whose different bodily parts are identified with different parts of the universe. So ever Hiranyagarbha Purushaha. So he becomes the inner controller of Hiranyagarbha. Because he becomes the inner controller of Hiranyagarbha, he is sometimes referred to as Hiranyagarbha also. But not in the literal sense. We should keep that in mind. Though he had entered into Hiranyagarbha, he pierced through the Brahmanda and came out. The expansions of the planetary systems within each and every universe are situated in different parts of the Virat Rupa, universal form of the Lord, and they are described as follows. Okay, so we are done with today's portion. I have some time, so I'm thinking now. Bhagavatarka Marichimala. Yes. Haribol, you had a question? Achyutanam Prabhu, I don't hear anything from you. I think that we should just continue with Bhagavatarka Marichimala. No, not like this. Good. Is the Lord's universal form completely imaginary? Or is there some reality to it? No, Kalpayanti. It is a Dhyaya Rupa. It is a form for meditation. It is a form for meditation. The demigods are very interested in all this. Those who are on the path of the Swanishtas, they're very much inclined, they're very fond of the Vishwarupa form. Demigods are very fond of this. It's a fact. Okay. Wait. Where? 1.3.7. What is this? Yes, it is 1.3. 1.3.7 on this. Shukasya, Brahmashavasya, Samvadasya Pariksha. Okay, this is now giving a list of topics that are discussed in Srimad Bhagavatam. This is all from the 12th canto. All from here. Shukasya Brahmashavasya, Samvadasya Parikshitah, Yoga Dharana Yot Kranti Samvado Narada Jayo, Avatarana Geetam Cha, Sargah Prathaniko Grataha, Vidrodhava Samvada, Kshatriya Maitreya Yostataha, Purana Samhita Prashno, Mahapurusha Samstitihi, Tatah Prakritikah, Sargah, Sapta Vaikritikashchaye, Tato Brahmanda Sambhutir Vairaja Purusho
Hare Krishna,
Yataha.
bro.
Okay, I can hear you, but wait. कालस्य स्थूल सूक्ष्मस्य गतिः पद्मः समुद्भवः भुवो उद्धारणो
Hare Krishna,
उद्धारणा
bro.
रिवोल्व यस कालस्य स्थूल सूक्ष्मस्य गतिः पद्मः समुद्भवः भुव उद्धरणाम्भोदेर् हिरण्याक्षवथो यदा यथा ऊर्ध्वदिर्यग्वाक्सर्गो रुद्रसर्गस् तथैव
Hare
च
Krishna, Prabhuji.
हरि बोल टेल मी
Is my voice coming now?
यस इट इज कमिंग अर्थनार अर्थनारी नरस्याथ यतस्वायं भुवो मनुः शतरूपा च या स्त्रीणाम् आद्या प्रकृतिरुत्तमा संतानो धर्मपत्नीनां कर्दमस्त्यच्च प्रजापते अवतारो भगवतः कपिलस्य महात्मनः देवहूत्याश्च संवादः कपिलेन च धीमता नव ब्रह्म समुत्पत्तिर दक्षयज्ञ विनाशनम ध्रुवस्य चरितं पश्चात् ऋतोः प्राचीन बर्हिषः नारदस्य च संवादस् ततः व्रतं द्विजा नाभिस्ततोऽनुचरितं ऋषभस्य भरतस्य च also described are saintly King Parikshit sitting down to fast until death in response to the curse of a Brahmana's son in the conversations between Parikshit and Shukadeva Goswami, who is the best of all Brahmanas. The Bhagavatam explains how one can attain liberation at the time of death by practicing fixed meditation in yoga. It also contains a discussion between Narada and Brahma, an enumeration of the incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and a description of how the universe was created in progressive sequence, beginning from the unmanifest stage of material nature. This scripture also relates the discussions Vidura had with Uddhava and with Maitreya, inquiries about the subject matter of this Purana, and the winding up of creation within the body of the Supreme Lord at the time of annihilation. The creation effected by the agitation of the modes of material nature, the 7 stages of evolution by elemental transformation, and the construction of the universal egg, from which arises a universal form of the Supreme Lord, All these are thoroughly described. Other topics include the subtle and gross movements of time, the generation of the lotus from the navel of Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, and the killing of the demon Hiranyaksha when the earth was delivered from the Garbhodaka ocean. The Bhagavatam also describes the creation of demigods, animals, and demoniac species of life, the birth of Lord Rudra, the appearance of Swayambhuva Manu from the half-man, half-woman Ishvara. Also related are the appearance of the first woman, Shatarupa, who was the excellent consort of Manu and the offspring of the pious wives of Prajapati Kardama. The Bhagavatam describes the incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the exalted sage Kapila and records the conversation between that great learned soul and his mother Devahuti. Also described are the progeny of the 9 great Brahmanas, the destruction of Daksha's sacrifice, and the history of Dhruva Maharaj, followed by the histories of King Prathu and King Prachina Barhi. The discussion between Prachina Barhi and Narada and the life of Maharaj Priyavrata. Then of Brahmanas, the Bhagavatam tells of the character and activities of King Nabhi, Lord Rishabha, and King Bharata. Ei granthe Brahmarsha Shuke Sahet Parikshite Sambad. So in this grantha, sacred text, the best of the Brahmanas, Shukadev converses with Parikshit. Yoga Dharanar Dhara Utkranti. That is the elevation through the process of yoga. These are all topics which are discussed. Narada or Brahmar Sambad, the conversation between Narada and Brahma. Avatar Geet, there are songs about the incarnations. Pradhanik Sarga, primary creation. Vidura Uddhava Sambad, the conversation between Vidura and Uddhava. Vidura Maitreya Sambad, the conversation between Vidura and Maitreya. Purana Samhita Prashna, question about the compilation of the Puranas. Mahapurusha Samsthiti, the situation of the Mahapurusha. Prakritika Sarga. There are 2 types of creation, Prakritika Sarga and Vaikritika Sarga. Creation of the elements and then creation of the beings. So, creation of the Prakritika creation that was discussed, that is discussed. Sapta Vaikritika Sarga, in the 7 forms of secondary creation. Brahmanda Utpatti, the creation of the Brahmanda. Vairaja Purushaya Utpatti, the generation of the Virat Purusha. Stula Sukshma Kalagati, the movements of time in its gross and subtle aspects. Loka Padma Udbhav, the generation of the universal lotus. Prithvi ke jal hoite uddhare janna Hiranyaksha bhav. The killing of Hiranyaksha in order to rescue Prithvi from the waters. Urzotiriyak avaksrishti, creation of the creatures in the higher, intermediate, higher, lower, and even lower forms. Rudra Sarga, creation of the Rudras. Rathanari Narer Utpatti, Arthat Swayambhuvanur Gatha. Generation of the half woman, half man. In other words, then history of Swayambhuva, Stri Gane Radhya Prakriti. The Stri Gane Radhya Prakriti Shatarupa Utpatti. There should be no comma after Prakriti. Generation of Shatarupa, who was the first woman amongst all females. Dharma Patni Diger Santan, the children of the wives of Dharma. Kardama Prajapatir Santan, the children of Kardama Prajapati. Mahatma Kapiladeva Avatar, incarnation of the great soul Kapila Deva. Kapila Sahit Devahuti Sambad, the conversation between Kapila and Devahuti. Navabrahma Samutpatti, the creation of the 9 Brahmanas. Daksha Yagya Vinash, the destruction of Daksha's Yagya. Dhruva Charit, the life of Dhruva. Prithu Charit, the life of Prithu. Prachina Barhir Charit, the life of Prachina Barhi. Narada Shambad, his conversation with Narada. Priyavrata Putra Charit, the lives of the sons of Priyavrata, Nabhi, Rishabha, or Bharatir Charitra Varnita Hiyache, and the lives of Nabhi, Rishabha, and Bharata are described. Tato Dvipa Samudradri Varshan Nadyupavarnanam Jyotish Chakrasya Samsthanam Patala Narakastiti. The Bhagavatam gives an elaborate description of the earth's continents, regions, oceans, mountains, and rivers. Also described are the arrangement of the celestial sphere and the conditions found in the subterranean regions and in hell. Dvip, Samudra, Adri, Varsha, Nadi, Vravati, or not. There's a description of the Dvipas, the oceans, the mountains, the Varshas, the rivers, and so on. Jyotish Chakra Samsthan, the situation of the celestial sphere. Ebong Patal or Naraker Sthiti Varnita Haiyache. And the situation of the subterranean regions and hell have been described. Daksha Janma Pracheto Yes Tat Putrinam Santatihi Yato Deva Surra Narastiryang Naga Khagadayaha Vashtrasya Janman Nidhanam Putrayosya Ditte Vijah Dvidja Daityeshwarasya Charitam Prahladasya Mahatmanah Manvantaranu Charitam. Here we have Manvantaranu Kathanam. Gajendrasya Vimokshanam. Manvantaravatārasya Vishnur Hayashiradaya. Okay, fine. Kaurmam Matsyam Narasimham Vamanam Cha Jagatpate Shirodamathanam Tadvad Amritarthe Divaukasam Devasura Mahayuddham Rajavamshanu Kirtanam Ikshvaku Janma Tadvamsha Sudyum Nasyam Mahatmanah Ilopakyanam Atroktam Taropakyanam Surya Vamshanu Kathanam Dashadadya Nrigadayah. Saukanyam Chatha Sharyate Kakutsthasya Cha Dhimatah Khatwangasya Cha Mandhatu Sauhareh Sagarasya Cha Amasya Koshalendrasya Charitam Kilbishapaham Nimeranga Parityago Janakanam Cha Sambhavah Ramasya Bhargavendrasya Nikshatra Karanam Bhuvah Ailasya Soma Vamshasya Yayater Nahushasya Cha Daushmanter Bharatasyapi Shantanos Tatsutasya Cha Yayater Jyeshtaputrasya Yador Vamshanu Kirtanam Yatravatirno. This is a typing mistake here. It's not Yatramavatirno, it's Yatravatirno. Bhagavan Krishnakyo Jagadishwaraha Vasudeva Grihe Janma Tasya Vriddhischa Gokule. The rebirth of Prajapati Daksha as a son of the Prachetas and the progeny of Daksha's daughters who initiated the races of demigods, demons, human beings, animals, serpents, birds, and so on. All this is described. So Brahmanas also recounted the births and deaths of Vitrasura and of Niti's sons, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, as well as history of the greatest of Niti's descendants, the exalted soul, Hlad, the reign of each Manu, the liberation of Gajendra, and the special incarnations of Lord Vishnu in each Manvantara, such as Lord Hayashirsha, are described as well. The Bhagavatam also tells of the appearances of the Lord of the universe as Kurma, Matsya, Narasimha, and Vamana, and of the demigods churning of the milk ocean to obtain nectar. An account of the great battle fought between the demigods and the demons, a systematic description of the dynasties of various kings, and narrations concerning Ikshaku's birth, his dynasty, and the dynasty of the pious Sudyumna, all are presented within this literature. Also related are the histories of Ila and Tara, and the description of the descendants of the sun god, including such kings as Shashada and Nriga. The histories of Sukanya, Sharyati, the intelligent Kakutstha, Khatwanga, Mandhata, Saubhari, and Sagara are narrated. The Bhagavatam narrates the sanctifying pastimes of Lord Ramachandra, the king of Kosala, and also describes how King Nimi abandoned his material body. The appearance of the descendants of King Janaka is also mentioned. The Srimad Bhagavatam describes how Lord Parashuram, the greatest descendant of Bhrigu, annihilated all the Kshatriyas on the face of the earth. It further recounts the lives of glorious kings who appeared in the dynasty of the moon god kings such as Aila, Yayati, Nahusha, Dushmanta's son Bharata, Shantanu, and Shantanu's son Bhishma. Also described is the great dynasty founded by King Yadu, the eldest son of Yati. How Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead and Lord of the Universe, descended into this Yadu dynasty, how he took birth in the home of Vasudeva, and how he then grew up in Gokula, all this is described in detail. Prachetagan hoite Daksher Janma. Daksha's birth from the Prachetas. Ahar Kanya Diger Santan. The children born from their daughters. Sei Kanyagan hoite Devasur Naratiryak Naga Khagadir Utpatti. The generation of, or the creation, or the birth of the devas, asuras, humans, animals, serpents, birds, and so on, from those daughters. This is the real evolution. Twashtra Janma, the birth of Twashtra, O Maran, and death. Twashtra is Trasura. Ditir Putra Diger Janma Maran, the birth and death of Diti's sons. Hiranyakashipu Charitra, the life of Hiranyakashipu. Mahatma Prahlader Charitra, the life of the great soul Prahlad. Manvantaranu Charit, the various activities that take place during the Manvantaras. Gajendra Moksham, the liberation of Gajendra. Manvantara Avatar, the incarnations during the Manvantaras. Vishnur Hayashirsha Avatar, Hayagriva incarnation of Lord Vishnu. Kurma Avatar, the incarnation of Kurma. Matsya Avatar, the incarnation of Matsya. Narasimha Avatar, the incarnation of Narasimha. Vamana Avatar, the incarnation of Vamana. Shiroda Manthan, the churning of the milk ocean. Devatadigir Amrutapan Quran. The distribution of the nectar to the devatas for their drinking. Devasur Mahajuddha, the great battle between the devas and asuras. It's a typing mistake. It's not Veda, it is Deva. Rajabamshana Kirtan, the description of, detailed description of the royal dynasties. Ikshvaku Janma, the birth of Ikshvaku, Sai Vangsha, his dynasty. Sudyumner Janma, the birth of Sudyumna, Ila Rupakhyan, the history of Ila. Tara Rupakhyan, the history of Tara. Surja Vangsha Vivaran, a description of the Surya Vamsha. Shashadan Nrigadir Katha, the history of Shashada, Nriga, and so on. Saukanya Katha, the description of the dynasty from Sukanya. Sharjatir Katha, the history of Sharjati. Kakutster Katha, the history of Kakutstha. Khatwanga Charit, the life of Khatwanga. Mandhata Charit, the life of Mandhata. Saubharir Katha, the history of Saubhari. Sagarir Katha, history of the descendants of Sagar Maharaj. Koshalendra Ramayar Papanashik Charitra, the life of Lord Ram, the king of Koshala, which destroys sins. Nimir Anga Parityag. Nimi is giving up his body. Janaker Janma, the birth of Janaka. Parshuramir Prithvi ke Nikshatra Karan. Parashurams destroying the Kshatriyas on earth. Parashuram making the earth devoid of Kshatriyas. Aila Charitra, the life of Aila. Somavamshiya Nahush Jajati Charitra, the life of Nahusha and Yayati, who appeared in the Somavamsha, the moon dynasty. Dushmanta Putra Bharater Charitra, the life of Bharata, son of Dushmanta. Shantanu Charit, the life of Shantanu, Putra Charit, the life of his son. Jajatir Jeshtaputrair Katha, the history of the eldest son of Yayati, Arthad, Yaduvamsha Anukirtan. In other words, this is a description of the Yaduvamsha. Jai Vangshe Jagadishwar Krishna Janmagrahan Kurya Chilen Sai Vangsher Katha. The history of that dynasty in which Lord Krishna, the Lord of the universe, appeared, took birth. Krishner Vasudeva Grihe Janma. Krishna's birth at Vasudeva's house. Tahar Gokule Briddhi. His growth in Gokula. Isakal Katha Varnita Akshe. All of these topics are discussed there. Tasya Karmanyapārāni Kirtitāni Asurad Putana Supayah Panam Shakato Chatanam Shisho Trinavartasya Nishpeshas Tathaiva Bhakavatsayo Aghasura Vadodhatra Vatsapala Vaguhanam. Is it right there? Brahma Vimohan is right here. Dhenukasya Sahabhratu Rambasya cha Sankshayah Gopanam cha Paritranam Davagne Parisarpataha Davanam Kaliyasya He Mahaher Nandamokshanam Vratacharya tu Kanyaram Yatra Tushtochito Vratai Prasado Yagya Patni Bhyo Vipranam Chanutapanam Govardhanodharanam Udharanam Chaiva Chakrasya Surabhe Atha Yagyabhisheka Krishnasya Stri Bhikridacha Ratrishu Shankachudasya Durbuddhe Vadho Rishtasya Keshinaha. Akruragamanam Pascham Prasthanam Ramakrishnayo Vrajastrinam Virapascha Mathuralokanam Tataha Gaja Mushtika Chanura Kamsadinam Tatha Vadaha Mritasya Nayanam Suno Punah Sandipane Guru Mathurayam Nivasata Yaduchakrasya Priyam Kritam Uddhava Ramabhyam Yutena Harinadvija. It's not Tutam, it's Kritam. Jarasandha Samanita Sainyasya Bakusho Vadaha Ghatanam Yavanendrasya Kushasthalya Nivesha Adanam Parijatasya Sudharmaya Suralaya Rupunya Haranam Yuddhe Pramathya Dushato Hare. Also glorified are the innumerable pastimes of Sri Krishna, the enemy of the demons, including his childhood pastimes of sucking out Putana's life, air, along with her breastmen, breaking the cart, trampling down Trinavarta, killing Bakasura, Vatsasura, and Aghasura, and the pastimes he enacted when Lord Brahma hid his calves and cowherd boyfriends in a cave. The Srimad Bhagavatam tells how Lord Krishna and Lord Balaram killed the demon Dhenukasura and his companions, how Lord Balaram destroyed Pralambasura. And also how Krishna saved the cowherd boys from a raging forest fire that had encircled them. The chastisement of the serpent Kaliya, the rescue of Nanda Maharaj from a great snake, the severe vows performed by the young gopis who thus satisfied Lord Krishna, the mercy he showed the wives of the Vedic Brahmanas who felt remorse, the lifting of Govardhan hill followed by the worship and bathing ceremony performed by Indra and the Surabhi cow, Lord Krishna's nocturnal pastimes with the cowherd girls, and the killing of the foolish demon Shankachuda, Arishta and Keshi. All these pastimes are elaborately recounted. The Bhagavatam describes the arrival of Akrura, the subsequent departure of Krishna and Balaram, the lamentation of the gopis, and the touring of Mathura. Also narrated how Krishna and Balaram killed the elephant Kuvalayapida, the wrestlers Mushtika and Chanura, and Kamsa and other demons, as well as how Krishna brought back the dead son of his spiritual master Sandipani Muni. Then, O Brahmanas, this scripture recounts how Lord Hari, while residing in Mathura, in the company of Uddhava and Balaram, performed pastimes for the satisfaction of the Yadu dynasty. Also described are the annihilation of each of the many armies brought by Jarasandha, the killing of the barbarian king Kalayavana, and the establishment of Dwaraka city. This world also describes how Lord Krishna brought from heaven the Parijata tree in the Sudharma assembly hall, and how he kidnapped Rukmini by defeating all his rivals in battle. Asura Ripu Shri Krishner Apar Karma Samo. The endless activities performed by Shri Krishna, the enemy of the Asuras. Putanar Stanyapan, his drinking the breast milk of Putana. Shishu Hoya Shakato Chatam, disrupting or breaking the cart while being a child. Trinabarta, Baka, Vatsa Prabhuti, Asurdike, Nishpeshan, is smashing Trinabarta, Baka, Vatsa, and other Asuras. Aghasur Bodh, the killing of Aghasura. Brahmagartrik, Vatsapal, Chauran, Brahma's stealing the calf herding boys. Dhenuka, O Pralamber Bodh, the killing of Dhenuka and Pralamba. Davagni Hoite Gopadiger Puritran. Krishna is protecting the cowherds from the forest fire. Kaliya Sarpadavan is subduing the Kaliya serpent. Mahasarpa Hoite Nandake Uddhar. He is delivering Nanda from a great serpent. Kannadiger Vratacharan. The vows carried out by the unmarried girls of Braja. Te Vrate Krishner Paritosh. Krishna's satisfaction with their vrata. Jagya Patni Diger Prati Prasannata. His satisfaction with the wives of the Yagik Brahmanas. Jagik Brahman Diger Anata. The repentance of those Yagik Brahmanas for not having served Krishna. Shri Krishna Govardhanodhar. Shri Krishna's lifting of the Govardhan hill. Indra Surabhir Dara. Krishna Abhishek. The Abhishek of Lord Krishna performed by Indra and Surabhi. Ratre Gopi Diger Sahid Shri Krishna Krida. Shri Krishna's pastimes with the gopis at night. Shri Krishna Kartrik Durbuddhi Shankachud Arishta Okeshi Bodh. Shri Krishna's killing of the evil of Shankachuda, Arishta, and Keshi, whose intelligence were evil. Akrura Agama, Akrura's arrival. Rama Krishna, Mathura Prasthan. Rama and Krishna's departure for Mathura, Brajastri Ganer Vilap, lamentation of the woman in Vraja, Mathura Darshan, Sri Krishna's sight of Mathura, Sri Krishna Gartre, Gaja, Mushtik, Chanur, Pangshadir, Bodh, Sri Krishna's killing the elephant, Mushtika, Chanur, Kamsa and others. Sandipani Gurur Mrutaputra Anayam. His bringing back the dead son of his guru Sandipani. Jadu Goner Sohit Mathurabas. His residence in Mathura along with the Yadus. Uddhav or Baladevar Dara Jatma Sahagare Jadudi gave Priya Karja Sadhan. His attempting to please the Yadus with endeavor by Uddhava and Baladev. Jarasandha Anito Sanya Samuha God. He is killing the armies brought by Jarasandha. Yavanendra Ghaton. His arrangement for the killing of the king of the Yavanas. Dwarakai Basa Samsthan. His arrangement for residence at Dwaraka. Surala is Swarga Hoite Sudharma Sabha or Parijat Anayan. His bringing the Sudharma Assembly Hall from the residence of the demigods, Swarga, and the Parijata flower. Veshi Raja Dikke Juddhe Daman Korea Rukmini Hara. His kidnapping Rukmini after subduing in battle the opposing kings. Actually, all of this are described in this Grantha. Harasya Jrumbhanam Yuddhe, Banasya Bhuja Tuntanam, Prajyotisha Patim Atva Kanyanam Haranam Cha Yak Chaidya Paundraka Chalvanam Tantavakrasya Durmate Shambaro Divida Pito Murah Pancha Janadaya Mahatmyam Cha Vadhastesham Varanasyaschya Dahanam Bharavataranam Bhumer Nimitti Kritya Pandavan Viprashava Padeshena Samhara Swakulasya Cha Uddhavasya Cha Samvado Vasudevasya Cha Adbhutaha Yatratma Vidyasya Kila Prokta Dharma Vinirnayaha Tato Martya Parityaga Atma Yoganu Bhavataha Yugalakshana Vrittischa Kalaul Nrinam Upaplavaha Chaturvidascha Pralaya Utpatistri Vidhatatha Dehatyagasya Rajarshe Vishnu Ratasya Dhimataha Shakha Pranayanam Rishe Markandeyasya Satkatha Purusha Vinyasa Suryasya Jagadatmanaha. Also narrated are how Lord Krishna in the battle with Banasura defeated Lord Shiva by making him yawn. How the Lord cut off Banasura's arms. How he killed the master of Prague Jyotishapur and then rescued the young princesses held captive in that city. There are descriptions of the powers and the deaths of the king of Chedi, Paundraka, Chalva, the foolish Dantavakra, Shambara, Dvivida, Pitha, Mura, Panchajana, and other demons, along with the description of how Varanasi was burnt to the ground. The Bhagavatam also recounts how Lord Krishna relieved the earth's burden by engaging the Pandavas in the battle of Kurukshetra. How the Lord withdrew his own dynasty on the pretext of the Brahmana's curse. Vasudev's conversation with Narada, the extraordinary conversation between Uddhava and Krishna, which reveals the signs of the self in complete detail and elucidates the religious principles of human society. And then how Lord Krishna gave up this mortal world by his own mystic power. The Bhagavatam narrates all these events. This work also describes people's characteristics and behavior in the different ages. The chaos men experience in the age of Kali, 4 kinds of annihilation, and the 3 kinds of creation. There is also an account of the passing away of the wise and saintly king Vishnuratha Parikshit, an explanation of how Vyasadeva disseminated the branches of the Vedas, a pious narration concerning Markandeya Rishi, and a description of the detailed arrangement of the Lord's universal form and his form as a sun, the soul of the universe. Shiver Jrumbhan. She was yawning. Banaraja Pastakartam. Krishna is cutting the hands, the arms of King Bana. Prag Jyotishpati Naratake Virashkuriya Konna Gane Ranayan. Krishna is bringing the virgin girls from after killing Narakasura, who was the king of Prag Jyotish. Shishupal, Poundra, Shalva, Durmati, Danta, Vakra, Shamba, Vivida, Mura, or Panchajan, Pravriti, Tauratmiya, O God. The evilness, the wicked nature of, and the killing of Shishupal, Poundra, Shalva, the evil-minded Dantavakra, Shambara, Vivida, Mura, Panchajana, and so on. Varanasi Dahan, the burning up of Varanasi. Pandav Digge Nimitta Kuriya Bhumir Bhar Apanoda. Krishna is removing the burden of the earth by using the Pandavas as his instruments. Viprashapa Chale Swiya Kuler Sanghar. His destruction of his own dynasty on the pretext of the curse of the Vipras. Vasudeva Sohit Uddhaver Adhut Sangvad. The astonishing conversation between Vasudeva and Uddhava. Only Sangvade Apilatma Vidya or Dharma Vinirnay Upadishto Yachi. In that conversation, there is the complete presentation of knowledge of the self and a clear description of dharma. Tadananta Atma Joganu Bhave Matyalok Prityak. He then abandons this world of the mortals through by dint of his own Atma Yoga, his own by him meditating on himself. Jugalakshana Vritti, the activities and measurements of the yugas. Palite Manushyer Upaplav, the chaos experienced by human beings in Kali. Chaturvidha Pralaya, 4 types of dissolutions. Trivida Utpatti, the 3 types of generations. Dhiman Parikshiter Dehatya, intelligent Parikshits giving up his body. Veda Shakha Pranayam, the presentation of the Vedic branches of knowledge. Markandeya Rishi's Satkatha, the auspicious history of Markandeya Rishi. Surjair Mahapurush Vinyas, the detailed arrangement of the great Lord Mahapurusha in his form as a son. Isagar Gatha Bhagavate Bharneto Fayachi. I'll stop with that. I'll just make a note that this comes from this. Okay, so I'll stop with that. One Shagalpadurveshya passing the behavior Chupatitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.